This single purpose to initiate the city's official plan review as required under the Planning Act. Under council's meeting rules, no other business can be considered at this special meeting. We have, I know we will have all members of council with us, but we're missing temporarily Councilor Medeiros, Councilor Fertini, and Councilor Williams. We have a motion moved by Councilor Bowman, second by Councilor Vicente, to approve the agenda. All those in favor? Motion carries. Do any members have declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter considered on today's agenda? Seeing none, the clerk will so note for the meeting minutes. Now, I understand from the clerk, the CO would like to say a word as well.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to kind of provide introductory comments leading into the staff presentation. I think it's important to add an additional highlight in terms of this special meeting, the work that's about to be undertaken, of course, with council's blessing and approval. But this is not your normal run-of-the-mill, planning process. It's the official plan, which is supposed to be done every 5 years. The last one done in Brampton was 2006. And since then, the city has changed significantly, as everyone here is well aware. A clear desire to chart Brampton in a different direction was identified in May 2018 with the endorsement of the 2040 vision. The official plan will play a fundamental role in aligning various city master plans, studies, and strategies to the 2040 vision and achieving a common objective. The proposed work plan that you will see and engagement strategy presented today is a 5-phase approach that is the start of an exciting transforming process towards the 2040 vision, from concept into an actionable plan. The process to developing this plan is integral and will involve engaging all relevant city departments to develop a plan that resonates with staff as well. Our plan is to deliver a forward-looking, innovative plan within this term of council that will provide the framework aligned to Brampton 2040 that positions Brampton in a more sustainable, urban, vibrant, and economically successful direction. Tonight, as many of you are aware, we'll be kicking off the community and stakeholder engagement strategy, hosting the first Brampton 2040 speaker series at the Rose Theatre with Ken Greenberg and David Crombie. At this point, I think we'll allow you, Mayor, to introduce Andrew McNeil, Strategic Leader of Policy Planning, to present the proposed 2040 plan.
Thank you, David. Presenting today is Andrew McNeil, Strategic Leader, Policy and Planning and Development Services. After the presentation, we'll invite any member of the public to come forward to delegate on this item, after which we'll then consider the corresponding staff report, item 4.1. So welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. It's my pleasure to be before you this afternoon to present the work plan for the development of the Brampton 2040 plan. And just before I start, I would like to acknowledge we've pulled together a interdepartmental team that will help guide and inform this process. So I know a number are behind me to the right and behind me to the left, and some couldn't be here. They're working feverishly at their desks. But I wanted you all to know that the divisional resources of the corporation are being mobilized to ensure that we get this plan right. For clarity, technically this is called an official plan review. For branding purposes, we're going to be referring to it as the Brampton 2040 plan. The city invested a lot of resources, a lot of energy in creating the Brampton 2040 vision, and we want to ensure that the public has clarity and can follow this through from vision to plan. So that's the rationale for using this name. We think it will make sense as we move forward. The city, as I mentioned, has invested a lot of time and energy, and we have a vision. That's a great place to be starting. The 5 steps before you, reconnaissance, inspiration, vision, direction, plan, are the key 5 steps that would normally go into the. So we're more than halfway there with a strong vision that has been endorsed by council in 2018. Now the job is to take that vision and turn it into an implementable plan and put it into the planning policy for the corporation, which then becomes the legal document that guides public and private investments in roads, in infrastructure, parks, buildings, et cetera. It becomes the framework that guides development within the next planning horizon. As a formality, I wanted to acknowledge that the Planning Act, there are 3 requirements to initiate an official plan review. The first is that we provide notification and consult with the approval authority and prescribed public bodies. That condition has been met. Attached to the report that accompanies this presentation is a letter from the Region of Peel acknowledging that they're aware that we are undertaking this process. I should also let you know that we're working quite closely with not only the region, but also with staff at the town of Caledon and the city of Mississauga. We want to ensure that we're all coordinating efforts and that our planning efforts are aligned. Ultimately, the Region of Peel will be required to approve the official plan, so that's why we are working so closely with them, and we will need to conform with policies they are creating as well. Second condition is to hold a special meeting of council where we are to present the work plan that will guide this process prior to commencing any work. That is the purpose of today, so that the public has an opportunity to comment on this work plan. And the third requirement is that proper public notification be provided of this, which we have done here. We are required to provide notification on 2 subsequent weeks, not less than 30 days in advance. So we have met that condition as well. I wanted to, as I mentioned earlier, we have an extensive staff team that will lead this process, and I want to be very clear. Staff are driving this process. We have retained consultant expertise to assist and help facilitate this process. It is a monster of a project, quite frankly, and their help is to help guide and inform with a lot of the technical aspects. I'd like to acknowledge Greg Bender in the front, who was sitting beside me. He's the lead from WSP, and a couple rows back, Christine Furtado will be working with us as well as the deputy lead for WSP. We also have additional expertise. Watson and Associates will provide market analysis, market research, helping us with population and employment projections, which are required by the province to be included within our official plan work. We have some sub-consultants with expertise in housing that will help with a lot of our affordable housing policies, as well as some independent third-party facilitation expertise. So we've got all the expertise, both internal and external, to deliver what we will envision to be a great plan moving forward. The timeline, and I mentioned this back when I was here in October to seek direction to proceed with the official plan review. And just as a reminder, we are conducting a comprehensive review. So what that means is it's a complete rewrite of the official plan. It is not just taking sections and tweaking them, it's actually authoring a complete new official plan. The timeline is to deliver this within this term of council. Our goal will be to have a draft prepared by Q4 of 2021. We will have to see when it actually makes it in front of council. It may be Q1 or Q2 of 2022. The reason for that, as I mentioned earlier, the region is undertaking their official plan review process. Theirs has to come first, and they're targeting Q4 of 2021 to have theirs in front of regional council. So we need to follow that. So if they can hit that date a little earlier, we'll do our best to advance that date as well. But the goal is to have this well in advance of any elections so that this can be hopefully approved within this term of council. There are 5 phases to the work. The first phase is undertaking background review and developing the detailed community stakeholder engagement strategy, how we're going to communicate with the public throughout the phases of this plan. Second is testing the vision and the development of growth scenarios. We have an exciting and compelling 2040 vision. We need to test that and make sure what eventually ends up in the official plan lives up to the integrity and the guidance that that vision provides, but it has to be implementable and based on sound fundamentals. The third phase is reviewing a detailed policy analysis and making sure that we get the future community structure of Brampton right. Again, maintaining the integrity of what is in the 2040 vision. Fourth phase is to prepare discussion papers and policy recommendations. The intention here is to bring forward policy discussion papers so that it's in manageable pieces for not only the public but for council. The worst thing we can do is show up at council with a brand new official plan and not having walked you through the process along the way. So we want to make sure that you're engaged in the steps and that we do our job to keep you updated on a regular basis and that there are no surprises at the end of this process. And finally, phase 5 is the preparation of the draft and final official plans for consideration by council. We have a detailed work plan. I will go through this at a fairly high level. If council is interested in drilling down to any more specifics on any of this, we're prepared to do so, but I know it's been a long day for you, so I'll try to keep this at a high level. Phase 1, undertaking background review, there's a tremendous amount of work that has been undertaken and is being undertaken by this corporation, and we're in the process of getting our heads around all of that. Ultimately, all of that work needs to feed and inform the creation of the new official plan, so we need to make sure that it's all rowing in the same direction to guide the official plan. We will be preparing a technical memo that identifies any gaps that may exist in background information that we will need to focus on moving forward. And each phase, I should mention, has a key community engagement, a significant profile event. As the CIO mentioned tonight, we will be launching the speaker series. Within each phase, there will be another significant event, could be workshops, etc. We're going to identify those fairly quickly and get those in people's calendars and reserved venues fairly soon so that people know well in advance what we can anticipate moving forward. And there will be a number of tactics and engagement sessions around all of those phases of the project. Phase 2, testing the vision and growth scenarios for the official plan. This will involve creating growth projections, undertaking land needs assessments, looking at intensification opportunities, and as well stakeholder engagement as we test all of that. That's the critical technical stage of the process that will inform a lot of what we do moving forward from there. The third phase, policy analysis and community structure. Again, we want to make sure that we get the structure right that lives up to the integrity of the framework identified in the 2040 vision. We want to undertake a secondary plan review. If you leaf through the official plan, there are a lot of secondary plans. Probably the most I've ever seen in a municipality. So we want to try and see if there's a way of consolidating some of those, bringing some of those into the official plan, again, with the objective of making this an easier to use document, not only for staff, but for the development community. The goal is to create a document that's easy to read, easy to understand, that people can negotiate quickly. Phase 4, discussion papers. We will look at creating a number of discussion papers within different themes, and those will be consolidated into a directions report that will then inform the policy that ultimately makes its way into the official plan. And phase 5 are a series of engagement tactics to test the ultimate policy, both internally and externally, that will ultimately end up in the official plan. As I mentioned, the discussion papers will be organized around 7 theme areas. These are the theme areas that were established in the 2040 vision, and we think there's sense in maintaining those as an organizing structure for how we present information to council, and likely will become an element that organizes the ultimate official plan that is created. Deliverables that will come forward in each of the 5 phases, as I mentioned earlier. We will be delivering a detailed community engagement and stakeholder strategy that's in the works right now that will drill down deeper into the key 5 engagement things that we'll be doing over the course of this project, as well as the technical memo that summarizes a lot of the background review that we're working through and identifies any gaps that may exist. Phase 2, there'll be a technical memo that identifies growth projections, land needs assessments, and market study. We need to plan to the 2041 horizon. That's mandated through the growth plan. One of the issues we're going to be working through is we are hearing the province may be shifting that goalpost for us. And this is a concern for both the region as well as for staff, because we need to know what time horizon we are planning to. We may plan a little bit beyond it. We're hearing 2046 may become the new time horizon, but we're waiting for verification from the province on that. So we will need to plan to what the province sets as the goalpost. We also want to undertake market analysis to understand what's the reality, what's really happening in Brampton, what could we anticipate in the next 10, 15, 20 years. If there are some structural issues that are impacting Brampton, how potentially can we intervene in those market areas to influence what we ultimately want to see. We're toying with the idea of some form of build-out projection, and this is something that's very hard to quantify what that means. Perhaps we will take a look at what Brampton, a city of 1 million, could look like, but we want to spend a bit of time thinking about beyond 2041, what growth in this city could look like so that we can properly plan for it. As I mentioned earlier, phase 3 technical memo that will look at secondary plans and ultimately the structure of how the official plan is organized. That's a bit of technical work that needs to go into it, but again, with the idea of making this easy to understand. Discussion papers, policy direction reports in phase 4, and then ultimately the draft and final official plan and schedules in phase 5. This is an initial list of some of the background work that we are currently working through. This is a bit overwhelming when you start looking at all the things that need to inform the official plan. We have already organized presentations by staff leads on all of these projects so that we can start to understand the key things that are happening in this corporation. I should add, this is not an exhaustive list. The fulsome list is probably twice this size when you also layer in what's happening at the region. So there's a lot of information that needs to go into this process. That's why we have the technical expertise to help us sort through this and ultimately guide and condense this into a manageable plan where all of these initiatives are aligned towards the vision that council would like us to implement. Project engagement, critical to a successful process. The Brampton 2040 vision did an excellent job at mobilizing this community. We want to live up to that bar that was set. If we can, we'll move beyond it and surpass it, but they've set a challenging bar, staff. Some of the things we will be doing, we have a staff technical working group that's critical that all of the divisions of the corporation are aligned around this. We need to build this plan together. It cannot just be a planning document. It needs to be owned and built by all divisions so that we all buy into it and we're all moving in the same direction. A steering committee will be formed, ultimately to review a lot of the work as we move forward. City Council, critical to this process. We will commit to bringing forward regular updates as we move forward so that you're kept well versed in the work that we are doing and you're not surprised at the end of the process with a final document that lands in front of you. Community Leaders Advisor Group. This is something that we're going to look into forming quite soon. The idea behind this is we want to reach out beyond the walls of this building into the expertise that exists within this community and find a group of people, respected individuals in all professions, experts that can help be a litmus test for what we ultimately create, that we can use to run policy by, et cetera, and test a lot of the work prior to it landing in front of council. Indigenous communities, this is an area that a lot of municipalities are spending a bit of time focusing on, how best to engage Indigenous communities. It's a requirement. As notice for this meeting, we did send notification to, I believe it was 54 Indigenous groups. It's not an easy thing to engage in. There's a lot of work going on in the corporation to figure out the best protocols to use, and we'll be working with the region of Peel closely on this as well to make sure we do proper engagement. So more to come on that front. Obviously, members of the public, critical to this process. They had over 13,000 had a hand in creating the vision. We want to make sure that they are involved in translating that vision into planning policy, planning document. It should have a sub-bullet there, committees of council. I was at the Age-Friendly Committee last night. Very clear to myself and the team that engaging committees of council in the formulation and creation of this official plan is critical to us getting it right and making sure that the plan is respectful of what this community wishes to see moving forward. Tonight, as the CEO mentioned, we'll be kickstarting the public engagement series with a speaker series. The objective behind this is to provide our community with some planning tools, build capacity in the community around some of the issues that we're going to face as we translate and move from vision into implementable plan. We've assembled a group of internationally renowned speakers who have expertise in doing just that. I'll just give you a quick highlight. Ken Greenberg, David Crombie tonight. The reason we started with these two speakers, they were instrumental in changing the trajectory of the City of Toronto back in the late 70s. And I should add, Premier Davis was, those three played a very strong role in transforming Toronto. Toronto was headed in a very different direction back in the 70s, and it was through their bold moves, and I should add, they were not popular at the time with everybody. So they went out on the limb, they made some bold decisions, some bold moves that changed the face of Toronto into what it has become today, into one of the world's leading cities. So looking forward to their speeches tonight. The second night, we have Stephen Lewis and Zara Abraham. I see the cheers over in the corner there. Stephen Lewis, as many of you may know, has played a leading role in the global climate change imperative. He's been involved in this for many decades, and we're looking forward to his speech about what cities can do to move the bar. And I know there's an incredible amount of work being done within this corporation. All of that has been fed to Mr. Lewis, and he's reviewing that right now to make sure that his talk is relevant to Brampton. Zara will be talking about social inclusion, diversity, and how you build a city that really embraces its public and reflects the needs of the community. The third night, we're starting with Gil Penalosa. Some of you may have heard Gil with his group 880 Cities. Gil and his brother Enrique did tremendous work in Bogota, Colombia, to transform a city of an incredible size, much bigger than Brampton, in 4 years. Obviously a different system, not quite as democratic as Brampton, but they did some amazing things, and generally regarded as some of the most influential urban thinkers in the world. So he'll be talking about how you build a city for all ages, from 8-year-olds right up to 80 and plus. Brad King was involved in the creation of the cultural master plan for the city of Brampton, and he'll be talking about the importance of arts and culture and how we can bring a lot of the hidden jewels that exist in this community to the fore and really develop a city that is a vibrant community, and we leverage the incredible assets that we have. And Pamela Blaze will round out that evening. She's an expert in employment, and we'll be talking about the employment realities that are happening in the GTA, Peel region, and what it means for Brampton. That's an issue that's critically important for the future and for the official plan, that we understand and that we get right. Jobs are not being created in this city to the extent that we would like, and we need to understand why and how we can grow that sector. And then the final evening, we have a trio: Ian Lockwood, Dan Burden, and Joe Minicozy. Dan Burden, bottom right, is generally regarded as one of the top urban thinkers. Formed a company called Walkable Communities, Livable Transportation. He currently runs a group called Blue Zones, and they are out studying around the world the communities where people are living the longest and where people are the healthiest. And they're applying that research to urban places throughout North America. He's a sought-after speaker. You typically have to book him a year in advance. He's made some room in his calendar to come and be with us that night. Ian Lockwood is generally regarded as one of the world's leaders in livable transportation. I know that's a topic that has come up in front of council many times about how you tame some of these streets, make them more walkable, easier to cross, etc. So he's an expert at doing that. And then rounding out the trio, Joe Minicozy is an economist who has worked quite closely with Ian over the years, and really we'll be talking about the cost of sprawl and how you put some numbers to this, and that can help us inform the plan as we move forward so that we can build a sustainable plan, sustainable from a financial perspective. So we hope that this is an exciting and engaging opportunity for the residents of this community, And I encourage everyone who's in attendance, who may be watching on their computers, to please come out and enjoy what we have put together. I should also mention we want to have a bit of local Brampton flair. So we'll be engaging each evening with some unique independent restaurants in Brampton, where they will provide some sampling for the people. They're limited quantities, so please get there early. But we wanted it to be have a bit of Brampton flair so that we can showcase some of the great things that we have in our community. And then we'll also be putting on some local entertainment, again, to showcase what's great about Brampton. Engagement. These are some of the key tactics that we will be using throughout the process. And we're going to be drilling down a little bit deeper than this in the coming days with some more details in terms of engagement, but things you would expect: technical working groups, steering committees, public open houses, engaging committee of council, online engagement, etc. So we will be doing as fulsome an engagement process as we can. Again, we want to live up to the bar that was set through the 2040 process. One of my last slides, we have a website that is currently up and running. It is brampton.ca/2040plan. If you go on there today, you can see all the bios for the speakers that will be presenting over the coming weeks. And we will ensure that throughout the course of this project, it's kept well up to date and informative for the public. This is my final slide. And although we are in the early days and just commencing this process, we're already thinking about the end product, what it will look like, what it will feel like, its usability. Today, if you pick up the official plan, it's a cumbersome document. It's very text heavy. We want this to be a visually engaging document. I mentioned last night at Age Friendly, this could be something that ends up on people's coffee tables. Very unusual for an official plan, but that's the goal. We want it to be visually engaging. We want any resident of Brampton to be able to pick this up, read it, understand it. You shouldn't have to have a planning degree to be able to read and understand a city's vision, and that's the goal with what we're trying to create. With that, thank you very much for allowing me to speak, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, first up, Councillor Frattini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I know it's early days, but I'm going through the list on 3.111. And I know we did a lot of work on the Heritage Heights. It's not on here. Is it going to be on the next list, or as we move forward? Or?
Heritage Heights?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So a lot of the work that we are doing up there, the goal is to create a new secondary plan for Heritage Heights that would then be incorporated into the new official plan.
Into this. So that will come on the next, as you said, it was on the next phase, next year, 2021?
Yeah, so our goal, and we'll be coming forward to council actually quite shortly. We're actually in the process of preparing a report to brief you on Heritage Heights. But the goal is to create the draft secondary plan by the end of this year.
Okay.
So the timing will align quite nicely, and then that will be able to be incorporated into the official plan.
It's not any reason because we have to wait for the region first, because we're going through the secondary plan there, and then when it comes in, or it has nothing to do with it?
We can proceed with that secondary plan. There are some provincial hurdles that
Right.
Are getting in the way a little bit, but it's not going to slow us down in doing the work.
So we're still continuing. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Santos.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a big deal, the official plan. How often do municipalities kind of go through an official plan review like this?
So the provincial requirement is to update your official plan every 5 years. The rules have changed slightly recently, so when you prepare a new official plan, you don't have to update it for 10 years. And then it's 5 years subsequently after that.
When was the last time that we did an update, or like a review or update like this?
So
Do you know?
the current official plan was adopted by council in 2006. There was an official plan review process that commenced prior to the 2040 vision. That was put on hold, so that never ran to fruition. So the current official plan is from 2006.
Okay, so it's really exciting and great to see, because I guess in the meantime, You had also mentioned that we have the most number of secondary plans that you've ever seen in a municipality. So it sounds like in the meantime, over that course of that period of time, we've been kind of doing things in pieces. Is that correct?
Yeah, through your worship. The current official plan, I'll choose my words carefully, it's dated. And it is somewhat reflective of a piecemeal approach to planning, where we've got a section on transportation, a section on urban design. So we have an opportunity to be a little more innovative in the kind of document we prepare. The trend in official plans now is changing. They're becoming a little more strategic in nature. City of London has recently adopted one that is probably the most innovative and forward-thinking in the province. That's the bar we want to actually go above and see if we can outdo the City of London and have the most innovative OP.
Well, and it's fantastic, and together matching it with our 2040 vision, super excited to see the process unfold. But I have questions about timing and flexibility. So as we go through this process, we know that urban planning thinking, issues related to climate change, technology, they're changing all at such a faster pace than government and bureaucracies can keep up with. And so we had our official plan, you said, in 2006. Decisions and assumptions around climate change, road planning, urban planning, design of buildings and structures and issues related to climate change were very, very different back then. And when you have an outdated plan that you're implementing many, many years down the road, you're faced with difficult decisions related to taxpayers' money and expensive projects like the Williams Parkway expansion project that are outdated, potentially. And so how, in this process and in this thinking, maybe London is doing it, how are we going to create the flexibility in the review process and in our plan that anticipates future developments and changes in thinking, design, like emerging issues and technology?
Yes, you've raised an excellent point, and I want to focus on the one key word that you used, and that's flexibility. There's an art and a science to this, and part of the art is creating a document that has some flexibility built into it, because we can't predict everything that's going to happen in the future. So as an example, a number of cities are moving away from being so rigid at controlling land uses. And really, if the concern are the nuisances, control the nuisances, but be a little more flexible on the other things that you can't predict what's going to happen, and you want to allow innovation and flexibility in some of your planning. But the other thing is, an official plan needs to and is a living document. So there will be amendments. After this is approved by council, there will still be amendments, hopefully fewer, but that will still happen because the world will change, and today the world is going to look very differently in 2050 than it does today. But flexibility is something we're going to try and build into this plan.
And I think it's also great that the stakeholder engagement is part of the process and ongoing in the process, because again, the young people who live in this city now and the future generations who will be living here are going to be the people who end up adopting what it is that we decide and what we plan for in the future. Some of us won't even be alive at that point. Some of us, not all of us. But anyway, thank you very much. I'm very excited to see this process unfold, and certainly looking forward to the speaker series that's coming up as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilor Medeiros.
Thank you, Mayor. I echo a lot of the comments from my colleague who just spoke regarding flexibility and adapting to current times. You know, document, it's only as, and you mentioned the art and the science, which is interesting. You know, the one thing you talked about the City of London. So the official plan is that sort of map, but the competitiveness that exists between municipalities. You know, when a big investor makes his decision, so I hope that lens, which I know that lens will be there, is what compels him to come to Brampton in comparison to other communities. And that speaks along the lines when the mayor talks about, you know, that's part of our strategy, FDI, that's part of how we want to be aggressive as a municipality, is to go after those dollars, is to try to attract that employment. So our document to a certain degree, has to be edgy. It has to not be something, just the document where someone can either go to Mississauga, Vaughan, or come to Brampton. There has to be that differential. What's that differential, or what's that sort of value proposition to come to Brampton? So that's what I'm looking towards in the document. And certainly you'll come back to that. The second aspect is Brampton's a very unique place. We've just talked about, this morning we had about our healthcare crisis. And then we talked about institutional racism. And then I would venture to say, which I don't have any proof, that we probably have more faith-based institutions or places of worship in our municipality than many other municipalities across the province. So that certainly tells me, and some of the pressures that we feel as councillors, is the place of worship, the proliferation of it is a characteristic, I would say, of the city of Brampton more so than any other municipalities. So that has to be engraved in our official plan, that sort of land use. And for example, one of the, you notice when it comes to our high immigration population and the trends, or high new Canadian population, and as we know, a new community group comes today, and in over 20, 30, 40 years, a different community group comes, or it's a different replaced. So how do we adapt to all this? And coupled with the fact that, second fastest growing population of top tier municipalities, all that stuff. So the uniqueness of our municipality also has to be reflected in the official plan. And I know that's where you talk about the stakeholder input. But going back to the 2040 vision, one of the biggest disappointments I had of the 2040 vision, which I felt, and I say this respectfully, we got, a high-priced consultant that came over who was, renowned across the world. And I bet you I could have walked down the street, and I know there's a valued planner here that would probably give me better feedback than this individual who came from outside, because all I felt that he did was get everybody in a room, take everyone's comments, throw it on a page, and here's 2040 vision. And that's not what I want to see. So it's great we engage and everything, but that the lens has to be, how can we be competitive, strategic, and sort of really reflect the character of what the city is, which we're more of a gritty city. We love our sports. We have more places of worship, and all these great cities around the world that we want to emulate can't take away from our sort of character and the nature of what the city is. So I know that you're going to do all this, and it's going to come in a good package, and we're going to get something that's competitive and works well. But
I honestly, I couldn't have said it better than myself. Everything you just stated is the essence of what we will try and reflect in this OP. You're absolutely right. We want to be nice to our neighbors, but we're in a competition to attract investment. One of the things that can help, there are a bunch of tools, but having a predictable planning framework that is easy to understand, and the development community knows that right out of the gate, that city knows what they want to achieve, and they know how to get there, and we're not going to get around the hamster wheel when we try and deal with them. That's a very effective tool to help attract investment, just one of many. But I absolutely agree with all your points about reflecting the uniqueness. It has to be strategic in nature, that leverages and builds upon the unique assets and attributes of Brampton. Brampton is a very unique city in the world, and we need to showcase that and build upon those strengths. So absolutely agree.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Medeiros. Councilor Willens.
Yeah, thank you very much through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the report. It's good, it's thorough. I just want to again thank the staff that are sitting up there. I know that they started a lot of this on our 2040 vision back when, I guess in 2016 or 2017 when we started it, and they reached out to the community, did a great job. So are the staff that were on the 2040 vision, are they involved with this official plan, moving it forward?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So they will be engaged very closely. There's one member that is working quite closely with me, but I should say it's not just the 2040 team. We want to make sure that all staff in this corporation are engaged. But I echo your compliment to the 2040 team. They did a wonderful job, and they will absolutely be part of this process because they have skills that I think can be valuable to this as well.
And I did have another concern that we were trying to change it, but I talked to Bob after the last council meeting, and he assured me that we're moving the 2040 plan forward. We're not trying to. I know it's going to be tweaked. Larry Beasley even said that himself. here's a plan, here's a vision, but you can tweak it to your own community, make it work in your own community. And it's nice to hear you're working with all the departments, so don't forget about my environment guys, eh?
Thanks very
Absolutely.
much. Thank
Yeah.
you, Councillor Willens. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Very quickly, I'll echo what Councillor Willen said about the 2040 Vision Group, largest public consultation we've ever had. But I will also echo what Councillor Maderos has said. I don't think it's any secret. I complain about this city bringing in consultants every single time we turn around. Nothing about any consultants that we're bringing in, whether they're good or bad, but I have an issue with the fact that, to me, bringing in consultants to do massive projects like this, what's the difference between the city of Brampton hiring an expert to do this for the city of Brampton, rather than hiring a consulting team? What is this costing us? Does anybody have any idea?
Absolutely. So the consultant fees are $500 for the entire process. We have a total budget of $750. That's a lot of money, but when you actually compare that with official plans in other municipalities, it's actually quite lean. So we have tried to balance and keep the consultant budget. Again, it's a big chunk of money, but we've tried to keep it lean because of the staff engagement and staff that will be part of this process. I understand your comment, and we are sensitive to that as well. I'll let you know one of the reasons why we selected WSP to help us is they've been working with the city of Brampton for many years now. It's not a situation where they're going to be parachuted in and not understand the context. They're actually quite versed in Brampton. They've been leading the zoning bylaw for the city of Brampton as well. So having an official plan and a zoning bylaw that speak well to each other is actually a very good thing. But I understand your comment exactly, and staff will be driving this process. Consultants are here to help us, to guide us, and provide a bit of firepower when we need it. But staff drive this.
Okay, and we'll be kept up to date as the project moves on to ensure that we're not going over $750,000?
On the budget?
Yes.
Absolutely. In my mind, I have never exceeded a budget on any project I've ever
always a
worked on,
first.
and I don't want to start now.
No, that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to this. It's needed. Previous council had started down the path of creating a new plan, but then we looked into the 2040 vision. And my only concern is we do this, we bring in the consultants leave, and then our staff is left without any member of the consulting team to make this vision come to life. And that's why I say I always prefer, if we can bring somebody in with all the skills and all the talents of a consultant. If we hire a consultant, they must have a couple of guys there that we really trust, so. Or girls. And they're the people who are running this project. I want to make sure that when this is done, at the end of this council, that at the start of the new council,
Yep.
our staff's not sort of throwing up their hands going, well, we've got this lovely plan, they told us how to do it, but we're not sure where to precisely start it. So that's my concern.
And that's a critical point, and that's why we very deliberately formed an interdepartmental team that will lead this work to build the capacity internal to this corporation so that we all have a hand in creating this plan, we know how to implement it so that we're not going to have to rely on consultants in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And on Councillor Bowman's point, I think what you're looking for is just as much transparency as possible on cost. And if
Absolutely.
I think it'd be helpful for council just to get an assessment on this, the totality of this cost. And if I've had people ask you questions, are you paying the speakers that are coming to the speaker series? What are you paying them? Things like that. I think if we could have a brief on that for council, that would be helpful, so we have a full understanding of what resources are being dedicated to this.
Would you like me to answer that now? or-
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so with respect to the speaker series, we set a budget of $50,000 for the speaker series. It's quite common to pay speakers to come and attend. 3 of the 10 have declined. They're doing it for free. I don't know if you want me to identify who those speakers are. And then one speaker cost a little bit more than the others, but the average budget we set was $5,000 per speaker. So 3 have declined and they're not charging to speak. One was a little bit more, so it balanced out, but it is 50,000
Okay, 50,000 for the four,
for the entire series, yes.
and how many speakers are there?
There are 10.
10, okay. Okay, thank you. Councillor Palashi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the city initiatives list and some of the holds due to the 2040s, is there going to be a report on kind of a status update on when those will now, work alongside the 2040 or continue with the work that it's doing, or are they on hold until the finalization of the 2040 OP?
To put things on hold and stop progress in the city. The work needs to continue, and that work needs to feed the official plan. If there are things that we can identify fairly early that we think may be diametrically opposed, I can't think of anything right now that would be, but we can come forward and share that with council and provide rationale as to why we think whatever project we might want to pause that. Again, we haven't identified anything just yet, but we'll have an eye to that, and that's part of the work we're doing right now, is to get a handle on everything that's going on and identify potentially what could be in conflict.
Okay. Just on that was my only question really regarding the 2040. I think that, it comes up every time that we do have a consultant and that we hire consulting agencies, and I think members of council have said it before, where maybe we're missing an opportunity to have somebody internal, if it's just a matter of facilitation or driving the direction. I think that we have a number of staff here at the City of Brampton that can either do that, or we need to look outside to hire somebody internally. And typically in previous years, it's always been around specialty and for whatever the topic of discussion is. But I really want us to have a kind of another look at the possibilities of hiring or looking internal, rather than always jumping at the consultant side of things. So I know that's not really directed at you per se, more so to our CAO, but maybe if we can really start to dig deep and have that conversation. Members up here, we don't like the word consultant. We get it. Nothing wrong with the consultants, but it drives up a lot of costs, especially in the public sector. So, do you have comments on that?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to the councillor. We hear you, collectively as staff, we hear the message. I think the opportunity to have the discussion on a more fulsome basis is the budget process, which is forthcoming very soon. And part of that challenge is through that budget process is a look at the staffing complement. And often, there's serious consideration to the resources of the organization with respect to the initiatives, the priorities, and the number of staff. And so at the end of the day, we'll be bringing forward recommendations based on your feedback, and it's a resource allocation question that will ultimately be up to council. So if there's not a willingness to provide additional staff, then often you get the consultant aspect, because then consultants can be paid out of a capital line item, as an example, versus embedded into the operating budget on a go-forward basis. So there's those aspects. There's also one-time monies available. For example, city has a surplus, and so that's one-time money. It's not embedded into the operating budget. So the one-time surplus can be used for a consulting basis, one time. Mm-hmm. They can be used capital dollars tied to a project, one time. And so I think part of it is that financial obligation challenge of, okay, you don't necessarily want to embed it in the levy or on the operating budget, but we can pay for consultants on a project basis or a one-time basis. And I think that, is maybe some of the rationale to why council feels that there's a lot of consultants. It might just be because of the funding component, and so budget process may be the best opportunity to flush that out more.
And for sure it is, and you're absolutely right. And typically, members of council, we see dollar figures attached to consultants or not, because it was worked into, the previous budget of whatever department. So you didn't use the one-time funding, but then it recirculated, it stayed back in that department, and they were able to use it from a previous year, right? So all of those things, I think, need to be flushed out and actually have that discussion on, the greater scheme of this. The scope is, how much is this actually costing us? Where could we actually save the money? You take the 2040 team for instance, they lived and breathed this for how long? And, I know that they're still going to be involved with this, and that's what I'm hearing. But is it that reporting structure is changing to, an outside organization? Where typically here at the city, we want it to remain internally, to have that, ongoing discussion and good collaboration. And once you bring in that outside organization, then people seem to be iffy and weary about the go forward basis. Do we have that good collaboration that we need?
So through the
But yes,
chair to the councillor. So specifically in terms of this project and the work of the planning department, so I can say that's one of the reasons why Andrew's here today, right? So when I arrived in Brampton, I noticed, yes, there's a high proportion of the work being done through outside consulting. And I'd say, it's been skewed over time to contract out a lot of the work that, in some instances would be better done internally. And I think as the CEO has indicated, there's a discussion to be had around how that plays out in terms of the budget process. But the opportunity is there to take some of these key projects and dedicate staff resources to them. And so by position, dedicated to putting somebody in charge of the OP. So that's Andrew, that's why he's here. We're having a dedicated team that's going to lead that. And at the same time, we're also reviewing the operations of the planning department. So we're reviewing the operations of the planning department. So that's the renewal project that Richard is very supportive of. That's something we're all taking very seriously. And that whole question of resourcing the best mix, because you'll never get, and you probably shouldn't get, to all of it being done internally. There's specific resources you're always going to want to reach out to consultants for. And there are some things that are better done with internal staff resources, right? And so that balance is something we're looking at carefully, and that'll be part of, if not even this budget process, but the next budget process, and we're going to be looking at that carefully as we go forward. One of the things that, we have an OP that, we're needing to take a really restart. We're taking a new process to it. It's building on some fundamental work that's been done. One of the reasons is Brampton over time hasn't had a group that's been positioned with the resources to maintain it on an ongoing basis, right? So it's been a big project that you've kind of had to put the resources together, and you do this Herculean effort to kind of get this thing up and running. What we want to do is make sure that we're resourced in the future to, once we finish this project, to have it as a regular program. So we're doing a regular update, so we get the data, so we've got the resources in place so we can respond much more quickly as circumstances change, to really make it a living document that responds to the community's needs. So part of that is building that through this process. So as we go through it, we're going to demonstrate where we need to get some resources. We'll come back, we'll have that discussion with you, and like I say, it might not be this budget process, or probably the next one. As we learn some things and go through it, this will kind of be gearing up to make sure that we are positioned for the future, because things are changing.
Excuse me, and I'm glad you said that, Bob. And I've been hearing a lot from, some of the meetings I've been attending for the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan at the region, Appeal of Drug Strategy. They're really talking about the collaboration and not specifically setting up, one particular department, but it's kind of like it's an overlay where it's like a spider web or the web in your brain where everything is firing, everybody's talking, everybody's collaborating. And, here at the City of Brampton, if we're, the team is the team, but ensuring that all that communication is still happening. And you're right, we weren't really there before, but I think that we're getting there, and over the course of the next couple of years, we'll just keep getting better and better. So I'm glad you said what you said.
Absolutely echo that, and I think the days of having projects being done successfully by individuals are well behind us. You have to work with so many people in so many different ways, and maintaining those networks is key. So starting up a new project from scratch and bringing in a consultant, it's not an effective way of working. Understanding where you need to supplement your resources, but also having a work program that tells you here's what we're doing in the next few years is exactly where we need to be.
Yeah, I know in the city of Brampton, we broke down silos back in, I think, prior to 2015, and then they built back up again, and then they broke them back down again, and it's ever, occurring, but we continue to do what we do. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor.
Thank you. The mayor has to step away, so I am in the chair. Next up is Councilor Vicente.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Just some thoughts on the value of having consulted. Having come from the private sector, I have seen so many situations where large corporations, large companies really value the expertise that you can glean from an outside consulting company. Often when you're busy doing your day-to-day work and managing your business or managing the work that you do, you kind of lose sight of what some of the best practices around you are. And certainly in a city like Brampton, we have grown very quickly over the past 35 years. And some would say it's good. Probably there would be a lot of people who would say not so good. When I think about one of the jewels of the city of Brampton, which is our parks and our creeks and rivers, which provide so much amenity space for our residents to enjoy on a daily basis. The only reason why that happened is because, thankfully, there are creeks running through those fields. If it wasn't for those creeks, we would have paved over them a long time ago. And so, because of an act of God, if you will, we were forced to create an amenity which has benefited all the residents of this city almost on an ad hoc basis, right? So when you bring in outside expertise to help guide you through a process as complicated as this one, someone talked about we're competing with other areas of the world. We want to bring those best ideas here, and we want to find out what are the design principles that other cities around the world are using to make their cities operate better. What's the best way of doing an intersection? What's the best way of positioning your growth? When I think about our plans for Queen Street Corridor, those plans can be copied and pasted, if you will, on other corridors through the city in the future. And so I personally value that outside opinion, because what is the cost of not having that opinion and continuing to do things in a way which perhaps is more internal, perhaps you have more control over it, but you're kind of missing the big picture of what's going on around you. With respect to the expertise that we are going to distill from this process, I have a lot of faith in the people that are seated up here. Those folks, they are probably going to be the future planners of this corporation. And so they are about to embark on what will probably be not just a 4-year process, but a 25-year process, whereby they will be the architects and the planners and the people who are going to help guide not just this council, but other councils in the future to make sure that the city tries to achieve what the Vision 2040 plan has laid out. And let's not forget that that Vision 2040 plan was thanks to the fact that the city of Brampton brought in an outside expert who has had the experience of planning and assisting other cities around the world plan their cities. And so I think there's great value in this cooperation. It's a partnership, and we're ready to soak in all of the information and to make sure that how Brampton grows in the future, we do it right, because we have so many great assets. Now we just need to build the rest of it properly. So those are just my thoughts, and I think that this is a wise investment for us to make sure that we don't miss out on the ideas that the Vision 2040 laid out in paper for us, thanks to the leadership of the previous council. So thank you.
Yeah, and to that point, I just wanted to echo, Vision 2040 is a very different trajectory for the city of Brampton. in order to make that real and have an official plan that gets us there, it's going to require a bit of, I don't know, I'll phrase it, sensitive cultural change. The way that this corporation would typically have done an OP update is not going to deliver 2040. So having a bit of external help to guide us, I would echo, is not a bad thing, sensitive to all of the concerns that have been raised. But I do agree, we want to get it right, and that's requiring staff and a bit of guidance from the outside to make sure that we do this right.
Thank you, Mr. McNeil. I see the CAO putting his hand up.
Thank you, Councillor. I just wanted to, if I may add some additional commentary with respect to the last official plan being completed in 2006. And Andrew was very diplomatic to gently say the plan today is simply outdated. It's more than that, and so some of the challenges related to an official plan from 2006 would affect any community, but in particular, a community such as Brampton, because of the tremendous growth that has occurred between 2006 to today. Speaks to the planning staff, and certainly the commissioner can speak further, being busy work versus necessarily productive work in the sense of us transitioning from reactive to proactive. You heard earlier about the number of secondary plans. This community is changing so quickly that there's been an ad hoc patchwork and quilt framework, which means every time a planning application or development approval comes in, everything needs its own report because it's not standardized or unified or forward-thinking and responsive. And so the current planning staff are busy because of the planning framework. And if we get the planning framework right, it frees up our existing planning staff to continue to look ahead and be more helpful. So the staff here are, we're in the whirlwind of the day-to-day operations and being reactive. We're really attempting to move from reactive to proactive through this process, augmented by the consultants on this front. And part of that also from an administrative perspective is the creation of that corporate projects framework, because so many items that are important to council cross so many departments, and that breaks down, a system breaking down the siloed aspect of different divisions, bringing them together. At the end of the day, it's the city of Brampton. The public doesn't really care about which department's doing what. Let's just get it done. And we hear you loud and clear. I think this is part of that overarching process of what you expect as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you, Mr. McNeil, for the presentation. And it's exciting to know that we're going to be moving that needle into the proactive phase and moving things forward. But up next, we're going to invite members of the public to come forward to delegate on this subject. Please come forward, sign in with the clerk's office in the front podium, and then come forward stating your name for the public record. Each delegation will have up to 5 minutes to speak. I have Sylvia Roberts on the list. Come on down.
Hello, my name is Sylvia. I'm a resident of Wards 3 and 4. I live at Steeles and Kennedy. I've heard from staff and I've read the reports. It's very good, and I've been very encouraged by what I've heard from council. I believe that Vicente is quite right that sometimes you do need to bring in outside staff. It's once we get this done, because of how large a project it is, then hopefully we can make sure that it is being maintained in-house, as quite a few other councillors have mentioned. Some of the stuff we have is a bit dated. One of those is the way we're doing intensification corridors. It's based on basically, here's North Chill Road, we're going to shove a whole bunch of stuff on it. And what's been found in other cities like Vancouver, they've implemented policies under Larry Beasley. It's when you do that, you actually have large quantities of traffic on there, especially trucks. So this is a zoomed in version of, this should look very familiar to planning staff. This is from the current official plan and shows the intensification corridors. And this, so in purple here these are where it's a primary truck route, ones with large quantities of truck traffic. The lime colored ones are connector ones. And I live fairly close to Steeles. My bedroom faces Steeles, and you can hear the noise. If you put residential too close to it, it will be an issue. In the past 10 years, since intensification corridors became popular among cities in the GTA, we've found just how badly pollution, both air pollution and also sound pollution, especially from truck traffic, is for humans. And so so for this, you don't actually have to bring in outside consultants. Working with Peel Public Health is an important resource for dealing with that. At Sheridan College, they actually have a chemical technician program, and it specifically includes air pollution. So it may be quite beneficial to work with them. So they're not a paid consultant, they're people within the city, and they have a personal stake in it. And they can be they're a resource. I know some of the councilors are rather fond of Sheridan, despite their issues. To find places for intensification, we can't just look at corridors. This is a map, it's from a website called Census Mapper. It's just a digitization of the census because numbers on paper aren't very useful. So if you look in the dark blue, you can see these areas have 1/3 of their bedrooms are empty. If you look at the older part, what was Bramalea and the town of Brampton, it's actually quite extensive portions of it. Many of these cases, the infrastructure is dramatically more than is necessary. For example, if you look at water, not only is the population a lot less than it was designed for, but our water fixtures now use 50 to 75% less. Even the refrigerators also fit 75% less. So you can add the population and you have the hard services there. So you won't have to have Public Works and Engineering go in, rip out the existing infrastructure and replace it. It's important to look at that because you can save a lot of money by doing that. It's if you look at Peel Village, where I live, there's actually lots of space for intensification. What's currently going on is houses are being bought. Some of them are being turned into lodging houses because there's not enough housing for single people on low budgets. But you've also seen a number of houses being bought and knocked down for substantially bigger houses. I'm sure that both the councilors for 3 and 4 have heard quite many complaints about. Those are currently the highest and best uses you can functionally do with that. If you plan out and look at redevelopment, you can make it so it's compatible. If on Kennedy, you're putting 20-story buildings and right behind them, you have 2-story buildings, that's a bit of an issue. If you have it more like 12 stories and then you have a 4-story one, so you're looking at more of the urban parts of Toronto, that allows a nice transition. So you still retain much of the neighborhood character without having harsh transitions, and you've saved a lot on infrastructure. This is a map from what is a company called Urban 3. One of the speakers, Joe Minicozy, is the lead on that. This map is from the municipality of Lafayette in Louisiana. What they do is they will go through a city, find out the lots, what the actual cost of delivering services are, and revenue. And they make it's in a 3D version, it's much easier to grasp. So in black, you have, this is revenue positive. In red, you have revenue negative, your standard budgeting colors. And the size of it is magnitude. It's very easy to show someone this. And it can be very beneficial both for staff, but also for councilors to explain to residents what is going on fiscally. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. You're at 5 minutes. I do not see any questions, any councilors for questions. Is there anyone else who would like to delegate? No. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bowman and seconded by Councillor Willens. The following delegations to the special council meeting of January 22nd, 2020, Brampton 2040 plan. Official plan review, work plan, and engagement strategy be received. All those in favor? That motion carries. Council, we now have a staff report 4.1, Brampton 2040 plan, official plan review, work plan, and engagement strategy. Do any members have any questions regarding the staff report? Okay, thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Willens and seconded by Councillor Vicente to receive the staff presentation and approve the report recommendations. The staff report titled Brampton 2040 Plan, Official Plan Review, Work Program, read all the numbers, R120, okay, thanks. And to the program, that the program identified in the above noted report be endorsed as the basis for Brampton's official plan review. All those in favor? That motion carries. We are at 3.2, possible delegations. Read the Brampton 2040 plan, official plan review, work plan and engagement strategy. No public notice regarding this matter was published on the city's website, and I've been told we've dealt with that. On to staff report. We've dealt with that. Item 6, public question period. There's a 15-minute limit. Now we can deal with item 6. This is where we invite members of the public to come forward to the podium and ask any questions about any decisions made by council at today's meeting. There's a 15-minute limit for all questions and answers. Are there any questions from the public about the decisions made by council at today's meeting? If so, please come forward, state your name for the meeting record and your questions related to one of the council decisions made at today's meeting. No, there are no bylaws. Oh, conforming bylaws. To confirm the proceedings of the special council meeting, and I have a motion by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Bowman, that the following bylaw before council at the special meeting of January 22nd, 2020 be given the required number of readings, taken as read and signed by the mayor and the clerk, city clerk, and the corporate seal affixed thereto to confirm the proceedings of council at its special meeting held on January 22nd, 2020. All those in favor? That motion carries. Next, our last item of business is adjournment. Council's next scheduled to meet Wednesday 5th, all here. Do we have to go through each and every one of them? Okay. I have a motion by Councillor Bowman, seconded by Councillor Vicente to adjourn today's meeting. All those in favor? That motion carried. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone.